the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. The United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean has noted that the impact of the COVID-19 on the region will cause 9.1% fall in gross domestic products, while adding that forecasts show a gradual economic recovery starting in 2025. The Commission's annual economic report pointed out that 2.7 million businesses have shut down due to ongoing crisis, while the unemployment rate has risen to 44 million people, and the number of people living below the poverty line is expected to climb to 231 million. According to the Commission, the current economic indicators surpass those reported during the 2008 global financial crisis, and the region will face a lost decade. The Commission also noted that regional governments will need to conduct an inclusive and sustainable fiscal policy, together with social policies aimed at reducing inequalities and assisting vulnerable populations in order to secure the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Bolivia's movement towards socialism presidential candidate Luis Arce has warned of the threats against democracy in the country, following the increase in violent acts and political persecution against the movement. The mass candidate, who leads all the polls ahead of the general elections to be held on October 18th, has called on the international community for support, as well as active observation of the electoral process in the midst of the economic, social and political crisis in the country, and following moves by the de facto authorities to seek the clan into power after having staged a coup in November last year and delaying the vote several times. Meanwhile, Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal has called on the population to maintain a peaceful environment in the lead-up to October 18th general election, following reports of political violence. According to local media, Bolivia has seen several attacks on political figures in recent days, among them against a Senate candidate for the Citizen Community Coalition and against the home of a regional electoral chairperson. Likewise, violent clashes have increased among rival political groups. Meanwhile, the Electoral Tribunal rejected the request presented by a conservative senator seeking to prevent the participation of the movement towards socialism in the upcoming elections. At least 4 people were injured in Colombia's second-largest city, Medellin, following an explosion at a commercial establishment on Tuesday. The incident occurred in the city center near the Patriotic Union Party headquarters. 14 firefighter units and the Medellin Health Secretariat attended the trials. Following an investigation, the Metropolitan Police stated that the blast was not a premeditated attack, as was initially reported on social media. The official fire department of Medellin determined that the incident was caused by the accumulation of gases during repair works being carried outside the property. Social and women's rights organizations mobilized in the Dominican Republic to demand the decriminalization of abortion in 3 set circumstances. Activists gathered peacefully in front of the National Congress. The protesters are demanding the approval of a new penal code that includes the decriminalization of abortion in 3 circumstances: when the life of the mother is in danger, when the pregnancy is the result of a rape or incest, or when the fetus has serious complications incompatible with life outside the womb. Abortion is currently illegal in the Dominican Republic in all circumstances, and the total ban has devastating consequences, forcing many women and girls, especially those from poor and rural communities, to risk their health and lives to clandestine abortions. Some suffer serious health complications and even death. And we'll be right back after this, a very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The 22nd EU-Ukraine summit was held in Brussels on Tuesday, with a number of high-profile officials in attendance. The meeting was attended by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European Council President Charles Michel to reaffirm the commitment between both parties to strengthen political ties and economic integration between the country and the bloc. They spoke of the successful implementation of the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement and the comprehensive free trade area. Furthermore, they once again condemned Russia's annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol. Over 850 refugees have been relocated from Greece, which is under fire for violations of asylum law, to other EU countries. This comes as aid groups push for an investigation over refugees continue to face hardships in the nation. Under current EU policies, some countries with large numbers of asylum applications lack support for member states, which also raises numerous human rights and legal concerns. As of September 30, a total of over 1,000 refugees left Greece to Belgium, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, and Portugal for resettlement this year. And Russia has recorded more than 11,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. Health authorities noted that recent infections were registered in several cities, including Moscow, which saw more than 4,000 positive. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that despite the latest outbreak, there is no need to increase health security measures. However, he urged citizens to comply with social distancing regulations. According to data from Johns Hopkins University, Russia is the fourth country most affected by the virus, with more than 1,200,000 infected and over 21,000 related deaths to date. Spanish authorities have readjusted the country's economic growth forecast for 2020, noting an 11% fall in gross domestic products due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. Spain is the fourth largest economy in the Eurozone.
This means that the estimated fall in gross domestic product over the course of 2020 is around 11%. This negative effect is especially noticeable in private consumption, which is particularly sensitive and highly affected by the significant increase in household savings, while investment, export and import estimates are improving. The trend in employment is also better than expected, largely because of the effect already noted on the temporary employment arrangements. Thus, we expect the unemployment rate in the financial year 2020 to be around 17%. Our forecast for GDP growth in 2021 is at 2 to 3 percentage points higher than in the baseline scenario, which means that growth could be around 9.8% in 2021.
Japanese and South Korean authorities have agreed to resume business travel between the two countries starting on Thursday, in a move to boost economic relations amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The bilateral agreement reached between the two countries establishes that visitors on short-term business trips will not be required to observe 14-day self-isolation periods, provided they test negative for the novel coronavirus and submit their travel itineraries, among other preventive measures. Speaking at a press conference, the Japanese foreign minister stressed that the relations with South Korea were strained, adding the exchanges of people from both countries were important, starting with business people. The Armenian Prime Minister has condemned Turkey's interference in the Nagorno-Karabakh dispute with Azerbaijan, while noting that the conflict needs to be resolved on the basis of mutual concessions.
Without Turkey's active engagement, this war would not have started. While it is true that the leadership of Azerbaijan in the last 15 years has been actively promoting bellicose rhetoric, the decision to now start a war was motivated by Turkey's full support and weaponry. Turkey has transported mercenaries and terrorists from the Middle East to the conflict zone, and Azerbaijan has allowed it, and I think the international community must evaluate these facts correctly, and that's the way and the first and most important step to stabilize the situation. Conflicts need to be resolved on the basis of mutual consensus. Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia are ready to mirror the consensus that Azerbaijan is ready to make.
Palestinian authorities resigned from the chairmanship of the Arab League meetings in protest of the deals struck between the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain with Israel. Palestine was supposed to chair the meetings for the 6 months, but Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki announced in a press conference in the occupied West Bank city of Ramallah that the country will no longer hold the position. Our sister Chanel Al-Mayadin has the story.
The presidency of the Arab League seems to be poisoned. One country after another apologizes for presiding the organization after Palestine rejected that role, because this alliance should be bigger than normalization agenda with Israel. Kuwait felt the weight of responsibility and distanced itself from what it has been described as a crimes against the Palestinian cause, a crime that cannot be followed by the Arab League. Before Kuwait's decision, Qatar sided with Palestine after the League's rejection to condemn the agreements of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain with Israel. Thus, the Arab League, after having crossed a red line established by all members, will no longer accept new ones, having enough with the allied members that it already has and whose political interests are similar.
Recognizing Israel in the region means a recognition of its legitimacy, of normalization with them, and that it may soon become a brother and a member of the Arab League.
It is not an overstatement to say that the Arab countries, one after another, are systematically disposing of all their principles, sacred lands and the causes of their refugees. The Secretary General of the League rushed into showing support for the vision of the US President, which means supporting the sovereignty of Israel over Jerusalem. Therefore, the Egyptian diplomat Abul Gheit, Secretary General of the Arab League since 2016, has lost his credibility as General Secretary and should resignate immediately. That's the opinion of Saeb Erekat, Secretary of the Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization. By giving a green light to the alliance with Israel on the military and security front, Erekat thinks that Abul Gheit has become part of the violation of the League's bylaws, decisions and initiative. Palestinians feel a profound resentment and a bitter sensation of humiliation.
The Secretary General of the Arab League insulted tremendously us with these recent statements.
Then, why does Abul Gheit insults Palestinians by accepting occupation into the Arab security system? These actions represent dangerous tweaks in the purposes of the Arab League and raises existential questions about its stability, unless it's deeply reformed and its membership linked to the respect of these principles.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Protests demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continue in Israel, with thousands marching in Tel Aviv on Tuesday. Netanyahu has been the target of weekly demonstrations outside his official residence in Jerusalem since the summer, with protesters calling on him to resign over his trial on multiple corruption allegations and also in support of women's rights. Due to coronavirus restrictions, movement is only allowed within 1 kilometer of one's place to the residence. As such, police were deployed the constant of protests. In the last week, Israel has seen highs of 9,000 new virus cases a day. To date, the country has recorded over 200,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and more than 1,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Kyrgyzstan's prime minister stepped down on Tuesday after the Central Electoral Commission annulled the results of the parliamentary elections held on Sunday in response to accusations of voter regression. As well as Prime Minister Kubatbek Boronov, the Speaker of the country's parliament presented his resignation, while the mayors of the capital Bishkek and the country's second-largest city Osh, together with the governors in the Narin Talas and Isikul regions, have also resigned. Meanwhile, at the emergency sessions on Tuesday, the parliament appointed the founder of the opposition Mekong Shield Party, Sadir Shaparov, as acting prime minister. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has called on Taliban representatives to accept a ceasefire in Afghanistan as part of a landmark deal to put an end to almost 20 years of conflict in the country. President Ghani made the remarks following the end of an official visit to Qatar's capital, Doha, this Tuesday, where peace negotiations are taking place.
Why are the Taliban so concerned about not declaring a ceasefire? Because 2 years ago, they had to threaten their fighters to go back and not socialize. My plea to the Taliban, don't be afraid of ceasefire. Nobody is going to wipe you out. Have confidence, have the courage to engage other Afghans. You're a factor for your life. The sad fact is, $60 million a year can keep the conflict going. But you're depriving your society, yourselves, of trillions of dollars. You don't need to engage in drug production to be wealthy. There's so much.
Ghana's Electoral Commission has received the nomination forms submitted by President Nana Akufo-Addo, who will seek a second term in office in the country's general election to be held on December 7th.
On behalf of the Electoral Commission of Ghana, I warmly welcome His Excellency the President and His Excellency the Vice President and all of you to the Commission this morning. Indeed, this is the very first time the sitting President of the Republic has visited the Commission to submit his nomination forms. As part of the Commission's efforts to ensure a transparent, credible, fair and yet accountable process, the Commission has developed a detailed checklist that embodies the criteria to be satisfied by the presidential candidates as prescribed by law.
The Economic Community of West African States announced the lifting of sanctions imposed on Mali following the military coup that overthrew President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta on August 18th. In a statement issued on Tuesday, representatives of the bloc noted that the decision was taken in order to support the handover to civilian rule in the country. The move comes a day after the interim president of the transitional government, Banda, appointed a new cabinet, in which at least 4 central powers were given to military officials who conducted the coup. Meanwhile, former armed groups are also represented in the transitional government, set to last 16 months. Mali has been plagued by an 8-year conflict that began a separatist movement in the north, while the security has spilled into the neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. United Nations officials have noted that the humanitarian situation in the Central African Republic remains difficult, adding that the country is at a critical juncture ahead of the general election to be held in December this year.
In less than 3 months' time, this country, the 27th of December, will have presidential and National Assembly elections. This is of huge importance to the stability of the country, to investments from private sector, and from pulling people up from the dire humanitarian situation in which they're in.
On a daily basis, we are witnessing clashes between communities, armed groups, and other civilian bodies. There are attacks against MINUSCA and other humanitarian actors. Our humanitarian space continues to shrink, further limiting our ability to respond to the needs which continue to increase.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.